Michael Shannon, you play Rick Carver in 99 Homes, and he's an unscrupulous real estate broker who takes advantage of homeowners being foreclosed on, after the financial crisis. He doesn't consider himself to be a villain, really, but what about you? Did you have sympathy for him?
Well, I feel like it's my job to try and understand why people do what they do, not to judge them. I mean, I think Rick's deeply aware of how disliked he is by the general public, and particularly the people that he evicts don't like him very much. But I mean, if I don't like a character, I probably won't play him. And it doesn't mean I don't think that Rick's a role model or anything, or that people should be like Rick Carver, but I do find him to be a complex character, and that's generally what I'm interested in playing.
There's an important scene, for Rick's character, where after have evicted Andrew Garfield's character Dennis, and then you've taken him under your wing. Rick has a scene where he explains his mindset, sort of why he does what he does. His experience with his father, and how the whole corrupt system has sort of changed the way what his job actually is. Did that feel like the centerpiece for his character for you, in a sense, in terms of informing how you viewed him and how you played him?
Well, I think it's a moment of great vulnerability, actually, for Rick to talk to Dennis so openly about his past and how he feels. I think Rick is desperate to make some sort of connection with Dennis or somebody. I think Rick's a very kind of lonely person, and I don't think he makes this speech very often because I don't I don't think he thinks many people are able to listen to it. But I think he has hope that maybe Dennis will understand what he's saying.
That's one of the interesting things about Rick as a character, where he has this ruthless side to him, but he does have also this relationship with Dennis that there does seem to be some affection there. Like, do you believe that's genuine, or is Rick mostly using him?
No, I think there's a genuine desire for some sort of friendship. I certainly think Rick wouldn't mind some gratitude. People a lot of times ask me about the end of the film when Rick says thank you. And I think he says that for a variety of reasons, but I think Rick wouldn't mind somebody, thanking him as opposed to just hating his guts. Because the thing is like, if he stopped doing what he was doing, nothing would really change. And I just think he wants someone to understand that. But no, I don't, because there's nothing really for Rick to gain by manipulating Dennis. It's not like Rick needs some sort of evil protege to continue his dastardly work in the world. I mean, he's honestly trying to help Dennis out more than anything.
Yeah. Did you sense any kind of because he approaches these evictions in a very kind of cold way, but like he tells Dennis, at first it's really really difficult, and then you just sort of get numb to it. Do you feel like did you play it with any kind of sense of like there's remorse under the surface for what for what's happening to these families?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I find that comment kind of curious, actually. I mean, the whole opening of the film is Rick watching someone who's just committed suicide at an eviction. And I don't think Rick's undisturbed by that. It was not my intention for the audience to think that Rick wasn't bothered by that. I think he's deeply bothered by it. But he's not. It's not a consternation where you pull out a hanky and start weeping crocodile tears. I mean, it's an internal thing. I don't think Rick's numb to anything. I think he's a deeply anxious and stressed out individual. But I don't think he's an overtly I don't think he wears his emotions on his sleeve. I mean, for Rick's a very practical person. He's like, what do I need to do to get the job done? To get in and out as quickly as possible. You know, I think he's not supposed to, you know, it's not his job to display his emotions. It's his job to sell real estate and kick people out of their houses.
What was it like working, so closely with Andrew Garfield to create that kind of intense push and pull relationship that those two characters have over the course of the film?
I mean, it was exhausting. I mean, we both worked really hard, and it was a lot of tension to maintain. You know, it's also very you want to make sure you calibrate the relationship correctly. You know, and you're jumping around in the movie, in the story, different scenes, and you're like, what? In this scene, like how much have they really revealed to one another? How, you know, today do they like each other? Do they not like each other? You know, just trying to keep track of each little stop along the way, the progression of that relationship. We had to keep an eye on it, you know, because unfortunately we didn't get to shoot it in order.
Now, sort of at the heart of the film is this kind of rock and a hard place, a conflict that Andrew Garfield's character has. You know, he loses his home at the beginning, and then he has to decide whether, you know, to get back on his feet by evicting other people from their homes. You know, if you know, did you ever imagine, like, if you were put in that kind of position, you know, if you would have decided to do what Dennis did, or if you would have just tried to find some other way?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to answer that question with any honesty whatsoever. My life is so different, and I'm honestly like, I wouldn't have signed the mortgage to begin with. I've always thought mortgages were complete scams. I mean, they don't make any sense. Why you would pay so much money for something that's worth so much less than what you've paid for it just doesn't make any sense. But having said that, I do have a mortgage now, but I know I'm going to be able to pay it. So it's not, well, I'm not going to what. But anyway, that's not what you asked me. The point is that Andrew oftentimes talks about how when he was doing research and he was down in Florida and he was meeting fellas that, you know, construction, basically working in construction just like Dennis in the movie. And he met a fellow one day who said, you know, I got into evictions because I lost my home and I was desperate for money and I got into evictions. And one day I showed up to do an eviction and I evicted my best friend out of his house. And I thought, well, it's the last time I'm ever going to hear from that guy. And I was very upset about it because we really were good friends. And then a few months later, he ran into that guy, his friend, and he said that his friend told him, I forgive you for evicting me. And the fellow said, well, why do you forgive me? I don't understand. He said, well, I'm doing evictions now too. So, I think there's a lot of people down there. It's a real tough environment economically down there right now. And if you got kids and mouths to feed, you got to figure something out.
And it's really tough, you know. This is a fictional story, but of course, it is dealing with things that a lot of actual people are going through. And you mentioned, already having feelings about, the idea of mortgages and the problems, inherent in them. Did you learn a lot more just over the course of making this film? Did it inform your opinions even more?
Yeah, I learned quite a bit. I mean, honestly, I learned quite a bit before I started shooting it because I went down to Florida and I spent time with a real estate broker down there. and he showed me the ropes. You know, when I first read the script, I loved it, but there were things that Rick said that I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Some of the lingo is just, I'm completely unfamiliar with it. So I went down and hung out with this broker, and he explained my lines to me, and you know, told me stories about stuff that he'd seen. He was very generous with his time and information and stuff. So I learned a lot before we started. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the earlier scenes in the film is the actual eviction scene where Rick is kicking Dennis and his family out of their home, and you know, it's this extended scene that's really kind of emotionally unsettling to watch. You know, this kind of trauma unfold. What was it like filming that scene?
It was quite an odyssey. You know, I mean, we spent more than a day on it. I think we spent a couple of days on it, which is a big deal for this film because we shot the whole thing in probably 25 days. So, but Ramin set it up in such a beautiful way. He made it so that the entire house was playable space. The entire house had been designed. Laura and Andrew had been able to place props, what they think their characters would have. And there was no lighting instruments in the house. And when you walked in the house, you were in the house. You could go wherever you wanted and do whatever you wanted, and the camera would just follow you. So that we were able to play out these takes, very long takes, you know, improvise. It wasn't like, you know, a wide two-shot going for close-ups, your typical kind of television coverage. It was very fluid. And then, you know, the sheriff that comes with me for the evictions is an actual sheriff who's actually done evictions. My clean-out crew is an actual clean-out crew. So it was just dripping with authenticity, you know, and the authority of people that had actually been through the experience.
And yeah, you know, those eviction scenes are, you know, throughout the film. They kind of reminded me of the film The Messenger, which, you know, was about, you know, officers who inform, you know, families of soldiers killed in combat. You know, it felt like a similar kind of trauma. You're sort of going into someone's, you know, knocking on someone's door and upending their life like that. Did it have any effect on the way, you know, you yourself just, you know, even just look at the idea of home? You know, you have Rick who thinks they're just boxes that, you know, that should be bought and sold, and, you know, then you have Dennis who really has this emotional attachment to the place he calls home.
Right. Well, I mean, I have to say, I've always been more of the opinion of Rick that I've just never been hugely attached to material things in general, homes or anything else, cars, shoes. I mean, who cares? You know? I mean, as an actor, you have to be very flexible and amenable to your landscape changing all the time. You know, you're always traveling, going in and out of different projects, different stories, meeting different people. So I'm not a real homebody anyway. I mean, I'm hardly ever home to begin with. It changed when I had kids mostly. That's what really changed it, was because I know it's important. And I think honestly, it's the same thing in the movie, is that Dennis is most worried about his son. I think if it was just him and his mom, he might be more likely to. I don't think it would be easy necessarily, but it wouldn't be impossible, I think, for him to walk away from that home. But I think he's really worried about his son. And that's the same thing for me. My kids, you know, my daughter says all the time, you know, I want to live. We have an apartment in New York. And she's like, I want to live here my whole life. And the kids, I think when I was a kid, I got that busted out of my system real quick because I just moved around a lot. So I didn't. That compulsion doesn't exist in me.
The film is directed by Ramin Bahrani, who you mentioned, who has gotten a lot of claims for, not just this film, but previous films like Man Push Cart and Goodbye Solo. Were you familiar with his work before getting a chance to work with him?
Well, the first Ramin Bahrani film I ever saw was called Plastic Bag. It's a short film he made, and I saw it at the Venice Film Festival when I was there with a Werner Herzog movie called My Son, What Have You Done? Um, Werner's in Plastic Bag. He's the voice of the Plastic Bag. And so that's how I happened to meet Ramin and see the movie. And I love this movie so much. I just, even though it's just a short film, I think it might be one of my favorite things I've ever seen. So I knew when I saw it, I wanted to work with him. And then I watched Goodbye Solo. I love that. And, yeah, that's basically where it started.
What was it like to finally get a chance to work with him? After seeing his work and knowing what that was like.
I mean, it's great. I love working with people that work hard. That you can tell that they're not pulling any punches. They're not fooling around. I mean, he poured his life into this for a good long while. He went down to Florida. He did all the research. He met all these people. I mean, he has such a high standard for truth and authenticity, and he didn't just take advantage of this situation, this crisis, to manipulate it into a good script for him to make him successful or whatever. He's actually trying to tell these people's story, a story that otherwise wouldn't probably get told. I mean, there's not like a lot of people out there trying to make a movie about this. And he put a real human face on it. So I admire that.
Well, I want to congratulate you on the film and your performance, and the reviews that it's gotten have been very positive, and thank you so much for talking to me today about it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.